Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys? How's your weekend?
Good, and yourself?
Good. Anybody do anything fun this weekend? No? Maybe just relieved from surviving the 10th week grading? I know, it's like, then it's hot again this week. All right, let me take roll, and then we will just kind of go over some business, review the quiz, and then start on directional terms today. Ace.
Here.
Olivia.
Here.
Amelia.
Here.
Jordan.
Here.
Milo.
Here.
Ruben. Jocelyn.
Here.
Kayla.
Here.
Jacob. Takeshi. Jacob, I see you. I think you're still trying to connect your audio. Carlos.
Here.
Darian.
Here.
Axel.
Here.
Larry. Larry. Charlize.
Here.
Emily.
Here.
Ian.
Here.
Nathan.
Here.
Denisa.
Here.
Let's see. Andre.
Here.
Patrick. So you're here. Phoenix. Vanessa.
Here.
Cody.
Here.
Josue.
Here.
Emily.
Here.
Brianna.
Here.
Jasmine.
Here.
Aaliyah.
Here.
Mark.
Here.
Micah.
Here.
Josh. All right, thanks,
Here.
Milo. Alexandra.
Here.
Cooper. Mayan.
Here.
Iratzi.
Here.
Emmanuel.
Here.
Michaela.
Here.
Finn. Logan. Marissa. I saw your notes
Here.
there. Andrew. Zane's here.
Here.
Okay. And let's see who just came in. I think Phoenix, you just came in. And did I miss Larry? I think you just came in, right? Okay. So I see you,
Yeah.
Phoenix. And what about Ruben? Are you here? All right. Okay. So today at 2:30, we will have a guest speaker. If you cannot make it, please message me, but this is somebody who's been with the National Academy of Sports Medicine for a very long time. I've known him for just as long, over 20 years, but he is one of the content developers for the National Academy of Sports Medicine certification, which for you guys who plan to continue this course next year, You will get certified as a personal trainer at the end of the second year. And then you can work. You're valuable, actually. You're hireable if you want to work as a personal trainer while you're going to college. It's a really good job to have because you can run your own schedule. You can, once you develop a clientele base, you can actually schedule it based around your school schedule. You can have all early morning clients and then have the rest of the day off, or split it up morning and evening and have afternoons off. So it's a really good job to have, and you can make a lot of money as an entry-level personal trainer, $25 an hour up to 45 or more, depending on where you work. And then the content you guys will learn in the second year is everything you're learning this year, and now it's the application. It's the lab portion. It's like when you go to college, you start majoring, right? The first 2 years will just be like your prerequisites, the English, the sciences, the chemistry and all that. And then when you get to your junior and senior year in college, it's your actual major. So it's kind of like this program is set in that fashion. So Rich will be talking about cardiorespiratory training and what we call bioenergetics. What your body needs for different type of movements, how it uses carbohydrates, fat, and protein as to metabolize. So it's interesting, and there will be a discussion question after the guest speaker that will be posted on Schoology for you to answer. So that is today at 2:30, same Zoom link as our class. And let me wait, hold on, give me a second. That's my YouTube. Okay. So let me open up Schoology and let's review the quiz. There is parent-teacher conferences this Wednesday and Thursday. I messaged the class as far as links to book for your parent, if your parents want to come to book an appointment. So it is on Schoology. I know this age group, the parents don't usually come, but I would encourage them, or you, if you want to come as well. The link is on Schoology, and it's the appointment slots I posted on Schoology. Okay, so let's review. So on the quiz, you guys may have noticed on your test, your scores, those of you guys who answered the extra credit ended up getting more than the test was worth. So it was definitely worth your time. It was an average of about 5 minutes to answer the essay question. So good job to those of you guys who attempted it. Even if you attempted it and it wasn't the answer I was looking for, I gave you some points. However, there were some people who got 0 points just because they were way off track what I was asking. Sometimes when you guys take an essay, a quiz that has an essay in it, you just read the instructions. If you follow the instructions, like for example, one of the things I wrote out was answer in complete sentences. Even that alone, some teachers will give you points for that, or deduct points if you don't answer, if you don't follow all the directions. So make sure you guys take your time and read the directions. Now this class was kind of a test class for the time for each question. So I made the adjustment. So this class was able to take it twice. And then you got the highest of the two scores. Okay, and then some of you guys didn't do so well. You got to think about, what is it that gave you trouble? Was it the content that it was hard for you to remember? It was, I mean, it is a lot of content, and it is, even though this is an elective, this is a science class, right? So the stuff that you guys are learning is not easy. So you have to ask questions. Come to me if I'm going too fast. Tell me I'm going too fast. If you want me to elaborate on this specific area, tell me that. So I'm willing to adjust the way I teach this class, if it's going to be easier for the majority of you guys, right? So a different way. I try to add visuals when I need to, so tell me if you need more of that. There is a folder in our Schoology page. If you haven't looked already, you should have looked already, but there's a folder called Lecture PowerPoints and Study Guides. If you look in there, there's the PowerPoint. There's also links to videos that I feel will help you with the information, with the content. Like one of the questions was, well, we'll go over it real quick. So, which I'm surprised some of you guys didn't get it. It was just defining physiology. And we went over that in class. All right, so let me open this up and I'll share with you guys. One second. Oops. All right, so let's, we'll do this together. Well, if you're unable to go, do you still answer the questions? And Jordan, yes, I will videotape. So Jordan asked if you're not able to go to the speaker, do you still answer the question? Yeah, I'm gonna videotape or record the session. But I encourage you guys to go live so that you can actually ask questions. Okay, let me see who's coming in. Okay, so let's look at this first question here. So this is a matching, and you had to match it to the body systems. So let's look at the first one. Secretes hormones into the blood, which control metabolic activities, water ionic balance, and other processes that require duration rather than speed. If you know the answer, you can unmute and just yell it out, or if you want to say it in the chat, feel free. So what do you guys think the first one is?
C.
So secretes hormones.
The endocrine system?
Yes, correct. The endocrine system. So our endocrine system secretes all the hormones in the body that control us chemically. And sometimes when the endocrine system would consist of like your thyroid, which is here, around your neck, pituitary gland, and the hypothalamus is in the brain. We talked about also the pituitary gland is like the master gland that tells all the other glands what it needs and how many hormones it should secrete. So yeah, so endocrine would be your hormones. What about number 2? Defends against foreign invaders and cancer cells, paves the way for tissue repair.
Immune system.
Absolutely, immune system, right? So the key word would be your defense against foreign invaders. Your immunity. It's what's gonna keep you from getting sick. So if your immunity, sorry, I didn't see the chat, guys. So if your immunity is low, the chances of you getting the coronavirus is a little different, but a flu or anything like that, it's greater. All right, number 3, obtains oxygen from and eliminates carbon dioxide to external environment. What do you guys think that is? Obtains oxygen. How do we obtain oxygen?
The respiratory system?
Absolutely. Right, our respiratory system, our lungs, right? The trachea, our bronchioles. So when we obtain oxygen, the only way we're going to do it is through inhalation, and then to expel carbon dioxide is only through exhalation. And in everything else, you don't really necessarily have to read, just because you know that it's obtaining oxygen and then expelling. All right, number 4, obtains nutrients, water, and ions from the external environment and transfers them into the plasma, eliminates undigested food, residues to external environment. Obtains nutrients and water and ions from the external environment and then transfers them into the plasma.
Digestive.
Yeah, digestive. So obtains nutrients, water. The only way we do it through the mouth. First step in digestion is the chewing process. All right. Number 5, not essential for homeostasis, but essential for perpetuation of species. That's the key phrase right here.
The reproductive system.
Absolutely. Perpetuation of species. All right, number 6, serves as protective barrier between the external environment. That's all really you need to read. And then the remainder, the body sweat glands, an adjustment in skin blood flow, important in temperature regulation. What is that? So serves as a protective barrier. Integumentary, that's right, Patrick. So the first system that you learned, first one on the list, integumentary. Remember, this is everything that is on the outside, your skin, your nails, your hair, right? Protects it as, so if you just read the statement, protective barrier, however, you do need to know that the skin is part of the integumentary system, but it is the first one on the list in the book and on your PowerPoint. Provides movement, protects body parts and mineral sites. What is this one? Provides movement. It protects body parts and also a site for minerals.
Skeletal.
Yep, skeletal. Good, Ruben. Yeah, so we need our skeletal system to move along with our muscles, muscular system. Protects our body parts. Remember when we went over the thoracic cavity, how cool the ribs formed, right? To protect all the vital organs that's in the thoracic cavity, which is our heart, the lungs, you know, all of that that's up in the thoracic cavity. And then mineral sites, I talked about that if you are lacking in certain minerals like salt and sodium, calcium, well, sodium is salt, but calcium, it'll go within, it'll take it from your bones. So it is a site for minerals to ensure homeostasis occurs. But if it's too much, if it takes too much and you can't create bone density fast enough to keep up with that, then you can have age-related diseases like osteoporosis, which are like the little holes in your bone. All right, number 8, removes waste and excess water, salt, and other ions from the plasma, eliminates them in the urine, and it's important in regulating the volume. Oops, sorry. Oh, time limit. Do you guys remember that? What that was? That was a urinary, right? So if you just look at the definition, removes waste and excess water, salt and other ions. So when we remove water, right, we urinate. Okay. So this one, you just had to look at the letters and then you had to match it to the name of the cavity. So A, for example, let me blow this up. I know it was a little confusing to begin with when you guys read it, just because of it had the, when you looked at the picture, it looked like you had to put the letter down, but the way Schoology was defaulted, I had to do it this way. No problem, Michaela. Okay, so letter A, what do we know letter A to be?
Cranium.
So these are your choices. So it would be cranial, right? Yeah. Very good. open this up on my other computer. Okay, what is letter B? What do you guys think the letter B is? So these are cavities, vertebral, that's right. So this is a vertebrae. Now, it wasn't looking for parts, right? It was looking for cavities. Okay, letter C would be the combination of A and B. So another word we talked about that the cranial cavity is also referred to.
It would be the dorsal.
Dorsal, absolutely. Right, so the top, remember the dorsal fin of a dolphin. And then letter D, and if you look at the choices, so letter D would be, it's in the thoracic cavity, but it's where the heart is located. Yes, mediastinum, which is this. Okay, and then letter E, which is this. So we know the lungs are outside of the mediastinum. It doesn't sit in the mediastinum. Yeah, plural. All right, another G would be this whole thing here. And here's your options. Thoracic, good. And then letter G, H is next, which is here.
Diaphragm.
Diaphragm, right. So that separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominopelvic cavity. And it's this muscle is, main purpose is for inhalation. All right, HI is next, I. This part, options. I just said it.
Abdominal cavity.
Yeah, the abdominal cavity is your stomach, where all your stomach, parts of your intestine, your kidney, your liver, and other organs are. And then I and J is the lower part of it. Would be your pelvic cavity, good. And then together would be your abdominal pelvic cavity. And the last one, L, would be the ventral cavity. Ventral is in ventilation, so the breathing, so all of this works together in breathing. We talked about how the diaphragm is important to breathe through the diaphragm and not the, so one thing that when you're in the sports med field, and I don't remember if I showed this class, I might have, is diaphragmatic breathing. Did I show you guys diaphragmatic breathing? I don't remember. No? So the diaphragm here, it's really important to learn to breathe through there. So if you're a singer, anybody sing? Anybody like to sing? Or if you're in band, they'll teach you to blow out through the diaphragm here versus your lungs. Because you can only hold your, so when you hold your breath like this and you take in air through your nose and hold it in the lungs, you can't hold it as long as if you can, and you can't push out like if you sing or blow an instrument as much as if you were to learn to use your diaphragm. Because your diaphragm is good for inhalation. So if you can build the strength and capacity of your diaphragm, you can take in more air. So diaphragmatic breathing is something we teach in sports medicine. You take one hand and put it on your chest, the other hand on your stomach, like right underneath your breastbone where the kind of this region is, diaphragm is. And when you breathe, you try to breathe so that the top hand doesn't move as much this way, that you try to move the bottom hand on your diaphragm. So try to breathe, try to take a breath and just make sure the smaller hand moves, or the hand on the bottom moves. And that's diaphragmatic breathing. And when you hold your breath, you don't want to hold it this way where the chest rises You just kind of hold it through your diaphragm. So when you're exercising, those are the things that if you're a client of mine and I'm teaching how to exercise, those are things that I'm going to teach you so you can get more oxygen and better breath when you learn to really strengthen the diaphragm. Okay. Next one. All right, this one, which of the following does not match his definition? Embryology, study of changes from conception to birth. Histology, study of tissues. Cytology, study of structures in a certain body region. Microscopic, study of structures too small. Gross anatomy, study of structures visible to the eye. Which one you guys think?
Cytology, study of the structures.
Cytology, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not.
right. Because what do we know the study of structures in a certain body region is called? It was one of the classifications of anatomy.
Isn't that specializing?
Yeah, but there's a specific classification in anatomy we talked about. It's regional, right? So we're talking about the body region, like your shoulder region. That's when I talk about your region, your shoulder region, or your knee region. That's regional anatomy, right? The whole area. So cytology is not that. All right. All right. All of the following are part of the dorsal cavity, except which one? The dorsal would be part of like the brain, more really the central nervous system. Who remembers? Thoracic, right? Yeah, it's the thoracic. Everything else does belong in the dorsal. All right. Okay, kidneys and urinary bladder are components of and the answer is in your question.
Urinary system.
Urinary, yeah, absolutely. Urinary system. If you put renal, I also gave it to you. Okay, all the following systems responsible for heat maintenance, movement, and posture. Which ones? Is it cardiovascular? Is it respiratory, reproductive, muscular, or skeletal? Muscular, right? Right. Even though movement and posture is skeletal, but it doesn't provide heat maintenance, so it'd be muscular. So the more lean body tissue you have on you, the warmer you're going to feel. So muscular would be, definitely wouldn't be the other. So this could be process of elimination. A person who is facing forward with their arms at their sides and palms forward is considered to be in which of the following positions? So this is a position in which, this is a referencing point. All doctors, medical professionals always refer to the patient side. So that would be called what? That would be anatomical. So the other ones you guys didn't learn yet in this, even though I might have mentioned maybe prone or supine, but anatomical. Yeah, anatomical. So it would be the position where you're standing, palms facing. It's the same picture as the one where you're naming all the cavities. She's in anatomical position. It's always a reference body position. Of which match the following systems is the correct organs? Cardiorespiratory would be part of, I'm sorry, let's go this way. Kidneys and bladders and ureters are part of the what system?
Urinary.
Urinary, we just did that one, previous question. Larynx, trachea, and bronchi.
Respiratory.
Respiratory, arteries, capillaries, and veins.
Cardiovascular.
Cardiovascular, removes excess fluid from tissues.
Would it be lymphatic?
Lymphatic, right? And then number E, or letter E, controls the body with chemical substances and hormones. Goes to number 3, right? Endocrine, right? So if you really look at this question, you're asked in other questions in the quiz, you know, really the same thing. So I want you to be able to know the system, your organ systems, and then, or the cavities, and then know what's in them. So you should be able to reference in both directions. Okay, very good. So this is the essentials for life body function. The body's blank are maintained to keep the internal environment distinct from the external.
Boundaries.
And all the cells, yeah, boundaries. So it would be the boundaries. Some of you guys maintenance of boundaries. I think some of you guys wrote. I gave you that. So if you just look, internal environment, right? Look in everyday life. Your where you guys live, right? Your front yard, where the gate is. That's a boundary that keeps anybody coming from the external or outside to coming to your inside. Your door to your bedroom is a boundary. You don't want anybody coming from the outside to inside. You close it, you lock it, right? So it's the body has the same mechanism. The largest one would be our skin. And then within our body, our organs also have cell membranes that act as boundaries. Even your femur, your longest bone, has a very, very strong membrane surrounding it to protect it. So the body has boundaries. All right, let's skip this one because it's very, it's all different. Let's do one more. The organs of the respiratory system include all of the following except. What do you guys think? First of all, think about what the respiratory system is and its purpose. Remember, everything has a function. Right, so it would be E, a thoracic duct. Everything else has a lot to do with your breathing, your bronchi, your pharynx, your trachea, and your larynx, and everything else. Thoracic duct would not be. All right, and the only other question I want to that you guys should not have missed, and some of you did, would be, let me read it the way it's written. Hold on. The branch of biological science that deals with how the body functions is referred to as the what? How the body functions. What are you guys studying? How the body functions. It's physiology. Anatomy is the structure of the body parts and how it's organized. This is like your filing cabinet, right? When we learn anatomy, but physiology is how all of it works together. So some of you guys wrote anatomy and physiology. I didn't give it to you because I needed you to distinguish between the two. All right, so all of your answers would have been on the PowerPoint, even if you did not read the book. If you read the chapter, you would have gotten a better understanding, obviously, right? But the questions are taken straight from here, and also lecture. Okay. All right, yeah, Patrick, physiology. All right, so let's go down to where I show we left off, and let me know if that's different than what you guys show. All right, so we left off on the last of the systems, which was the reproductive system. And then we're gonna go into anatomical planes. Is that what you guys show? Oh, maybe I got. Yeah, I don't think we went into anatomical planes yet. Okay, please take notes. Because now that we're going to start to go into planes. We'll be referencing the directional terms quite a bit. So we're going to spend some time on the directional terms to make sure that we all understand it as well as the next person. Because if this part gets confused, let me know, and then we can expand more. So in this chapter, this section, you may have to draw a little bit in your notes.
Does more than catch errors. With Grammarly, you can find
It's really similar. It's when the ball gets past. Your head is on top of your body, right? I mean, of course it is. It's on top of your neck, and that's above everything else.
But what about now?
I'm Patrick Kelly, and today we're learning how to describe where things are on the body. We call these directional terms. And if you watched my last video about naming the regions of the body, you know what they're called, but now we have to talk about where they are and how to get to them. And to give accurate directions, anatomists need a consistent map to base them off of. That's why we use the anatomic position, a standardized position that we picture in our heads whenever we're using these directional terms. Here, stand up and do this with me. It's standing up straight, feet flat on the floor, looking forward, arms by your side, and palms facing forward. This will be forever and always your reference point for talking directional terms. Now, this body thing is three-dimensional, so we're gonna need some axes and planes to work with. And you can think of these like lines that slice people in half. Like imaginary, they're imaginary lines. First up is the transverse plane, which cuts people into a top half and a bottom half at the waist. And let me just blow your mind with some magic. It cuts people into a half that looks like a T and one that looks like an upside down V for transverse. The frontal plane just divides the body into a front half and a back half. Not nearly as mind-blowing, but it is easier to remember. Finally, the sagittal plane divides the body into a left half and a right half. It's the only way that you can divide a body into two identical halves. So I remember this one by the two identical T's in the name. And because the sagittal plane gives us two equal sides, it also gives us our midline, which helps us establish our first two directional terms. There's medial, which means we're going towards the midline, and lateral, which means we're going away from the midline or out to the side. If you've seen a lateral in football, it's really similar. It's when the ball gets passed sideways. It's the same thing in directional terminology. And since you have two equal sides of the body, things can be bilateral, which means that they're on both sides. Now, maybe you're thinking you're all high and mighty because you learned some directional terms. You might even think that you're superior to all others around you who are inferior. First off, wow, that's incredibly rude. How dare you talk about people like that? But also, those are our next two directional terms. How did you know? Superior means pointing towards your head, while inferior means pointing away from your head. Now, if I look down or inferiorly, do you see that? Ah, it's ants, which is exactly how you're going to remember the term anterior, or referring to the front of the body. And on the flip side is the posterior, or the back half of the body. And excuse me, would you please stop staring? Gosh, you're so superficial. Luckily, superficial is the directional term for shallow, or towards the skin. And on the other side, you could be going deep, away from the skin. Now, the limbs get their own terms because they're all over the place. If you take your arm out and look at your fingers, they're so far away, they're so distant, which is exactly how you're going to remember that directional term. Anything away from that joint is going to be distal. But if you look at your shoulder, it's in way closer proximity, which is how you're going to remember that directional term, proximal. And you can say the same thing for your leg. Your hip is proximal to your knee, but your toes are distal to your shin. Speaking of your toes, that whole foot thing doesn't really have an easy shape. So we call the bottom of your foot the plantar side, and the top part of your foot the dorsal side, which is the side that you tie your shoelaces on. And you'll probably tie those shoelaces with your hand, which have a palmar side and a dorsal side as well. Now that you know the basics, you get to have some fun with them. You can start using them to give directions all around the body, like, I can never reach my posterior thoracic. Can you scratch that for me? Or you can use a combination combination of directional terms. Yeah, that's good. Just like a little more superior laterally. And really, you never know exactly when you're going to use them, but you do know for sure that you are going to use these every day in your study of anatomy. And if you need a refresher on the regions of the body now that you are directional terms pro, you can go ahead and check out this video right here. And if this video helps you out, move those phalanges superiorly and hit that subscribe button. So until next time, have fun, be good.
All right, so I added this. This video is also on your study guide, so if you need
To rewatch it, you can rewatch it a little later on your own time. Do so. So let's talk about directional terms. So it's important to map the body. So in anatomy, we're learning where all the body parts are and its classifications. Now we got to offer directions to the body. So think of your body as like the United States, right? When you look at a map, you need to know, or even just in LA, right? We need to know where north and south is, east and west. Those of you guys who will start driving, especially, you need to know those directions. You know, if I'm going to Pasadena, I'm going to go east. If I'm going to go to Glendale, I'm going west, and then north and south would just be the other way. So the body, think of anatomical planes and direction as the same thing. So the anatomical planes are positions of various parts of the body. The specific planes are your coronal, which is your frontal. So if I take the body here, and this is a body, and I take these imaginary pieces of glass, right? So I'm going to divide the body into sections. And if I take the piece of glass, and if I'm in anatomical position, and I just take it right down the center, and I'm going to divide the body into front and back halves. So imagine you're standing, you can take a sheet of glass through your head all the way down the body, dividing the body into front and back halves. This is called the frontal or the coronal plane. The front part of you, so if you're looking in the mirror, that's called the anterior. And then the back side is called your posterior portions. So anterior and posterior, and that's the frontal plane. So the definition would be the body is divided into two planes in the frontal plane, anterior, I'm sorry, two halves, the anterior and posterior halves. What's really important about knowing the anatomical planes is to identify where, let's say muscles, when you start getting into the muscles, right? And then knowing that if it's in the anterior side, knowing if it's in the posterior side, it does very specific movements. Now, if I take that same sheet of glass, and if I now turn it, let me go back to the picture. So I'm taking the sheet of glass, which originally divided the body into anterior and posterior halves. And now I'm going to turn it because I want to divide my body into left and right halves, right? So left and right halves. That is called the sagittal plane. So all I'm doing is turning. Now I'm standing in anatomical position. I have my left side and my right side. That is called sagittal plane. So the sagittal plane divides the body into left and right halves. If I take that same sheet of glass now, and I'm going to flip it. So I'm going to divide the body evenly into top and bottom halves. That is called your transverse plane. And this divides the body into superior. That's the top portion, because remember, the reason it's called superior is because anything going towards the brain, so that's a superior part of our body, controls everything in our body. So it's superior. That's going up towards the brain is superior, and then going below would be inferior. Towards the feet is the inferior direction. So the transverse plane divides the body into superior and inferior portions. Is everyone clear on that? Can you visualize it? Yes, no? Let me know, please. You need me to elaborate before I continue. Okay, so I want to make sure you guys got that. Let me see if I posted another simpler video on. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right, so that's your 3 cardinal planes. These are like the 3 main planes. You need to divide the body into front and back, left and right, up and down. Right, so that's great for mapping. So when we describe the positions in body parts, we want to create that imaginary anatomical division. And this is something we talked about before. Anatomical position would be the body facing erect, so upright or forward, facing forward, arms held to the sides, and palms of hands facing forward. And again, anatomical position, even though it says the body standing, if the patient is on the bed, right, we're still referencing them in anatomical position. All right, so we talked about the inferior, is anything going below? And these are reference points. Superior is anything above. So if I wanted to talk, if I asked you where is my elbow relative to my shoulder, what direction am I going? Elbow relative to my shoulder. Where is your elbow relative to your shoulder? Inferior, right? It's below. I'm going down. So your elbow, and I'm talking about in anatomical position. Yes, if I stood like this, that is not anatomical position. Even if I did stand like this and I tell you where's my elbow, if I said in anatomical position, where's my elbow relative to my shoulder, you're still going to say inferior because it's going below. Do you guys understand? Does that make sense to you guys?
So your shoulder relative to your elbow is superior?
Yeah, so if you flip it, right? So your shoulder relative to your elbow is going up, right? So that's superior. The direction is up.
All right, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Perfect. How about your knee? How about your knee relative to your hip?
Inferior.
Inferior, absolutely. What about your ears relative to your chin?
Superior.
Absolutely. Perfect. Okay, so you guys got the gist of that. Awesome. Now, when we talk about the lateral direction, we're talking about anything towards the side or away from our midline. So our midline would be like let me go back to this picture. Midline would be everything down right in the center of our body. So if I want you to move laterally, right, I'm going to move side to side. So if my ears, an example you see here, where are my ears relative to my eyes? Your ears relative to your eyes is what? If I'm going off to the side? Lateral, right. Same thing, if I were to say, where are my eyes relative to my ears? It's lateral. It's neither inferior or superior, right? It's horizontal, it's in the horizontal direction, but it's to the side of it. I'm sorry, the other way would be a medial, take that back. So ears, that is lateral to the eyes because it's going away from midline. If I were to go back, if I went the other way, where are my eyes relative to my ears? That would be medial, so that's the middle. So inferior and superior are opposite of each other. lateral and medial are opposites of each other. So medial would be the midline of your body, right down the center. Anterior, or they call it ventral, but in this class I usually refer to it as anterior, is anything towards the front, right? We talked about the frontal plane. If I take that sheet of glass and I just put it right down the center, facing forward, I'm going to divide your body into front and back halves. The front half is your anterior. So anything that's moving towards the front would be anterior. So like your eyes are anterior to the brain. Your eyes are anterior to the brain. Where is your heart relative to your shoulder blades?
Anterior.
Anterior, it's going towards the front, right? So if you look in the mirror, you're looking at your anterior, like straight ahead. This is your anterior. Now the opposite of that would be your posterior. So towards the back. So where your shoulder blade then is posterior of your heart. Your brain is posterior of the eyes. So anything towards the back. So anterior and posterior are opposites. So these are directional terms. When we, like I said, when we start getting into the muscle and the muscle movements and functions, knowing where the muscles are located, whether it's the inferior, superior, lateral, anterior, posterior, or medial, has a very specific function at location of the body. All right, before we get into the next slide, let me show you one more picture just so, okay. One more video, it's a simpler one. Please ask if you have questions. This is under, all right.
We want to describe motion of the human body. We need to identify the space on which that motion occurs. To do this, we divide the body into 3 different sections or planes: sagittal, transverse, and frontal. Today, Molly is going to be demonstrating these motions and how they occur on each one of these planes. The sagittal plane is a vertical plane cutting the body into left and right halves. So any forward and backward movement parallel to this plane occurs in the sagittal plane. Movements such as flexion and extension will occur in the sagittal plane. As you can see with this lunge movement that Molly is demonstrating, her body is moving front to back, flexing and extending at the hip and knee joint, therefore occurring in the sagittal plane. Also, an exercise such as a bicep curl would occur in the sagittal plane. The flexion movement at the elbow joint is running parallel to that invisible plane, again dividing the body into left and right halves. The frontal plane is a vertical plane that passes through the body, dividing it into anterior and posterior halves. Any lateral or side movement moving towards or away from the midline will be on the frontal plane. So movements such as adduction and abduction, or elevation and depression of the scapula, will occur on the frontal plane. For example, Molly is performing a jumping jack, which occurs on the frontal plane. Since the movement of ab and adduction of the arms and legs is occurring parallel to that plane, moving towards and away from the midline. Additionally, Molly is also performing a lateral torso flexion. That would occur on the frontal plane since the movement of her torso is occurring parallel to that plane, again, which is dividing the body into anterior and posterior halves. Lastly is the transverse plane. This is a horizontal plane that divides the body or parts of the body into top and bottom halves. Anytime we rotate a joint, it occurs in the transverse plane. So movements such as rotation, pronation, and supination all occur in the transverse plane. For example, you can see that Molly is demonstrating an external and internal rotation of the humerus. Since this rotation at the shoulder joint is pivoting, it indicates it's on the transverse plane. A movement also like this torso rotation that Molly is demonstrating, the movement is running parallel to that invisible plane, which is cutting the body in half. Keep in mind that while it's helpful to define the three principal planes, many human movements do not occur in a single plane and usually cross two or more. As Molly is demonstrating a lunge with an upper body rotation, you can see it occurs in both the sagittal and transverse plane. To get a better idea of how the planes of motion work, try applying it to your everyday life. As you make movements in your daily life, try and think about what plane of motion that occurs in.
All right, so that's, I also added that into Schoology. So take a look at that and watch it a little bit slower. All right, rewind it if you need to.
All right, so we should all have kind of a better understanding of what frontal plane is, how the body is divided into front and back halves, anterior, posterior halves. Sagittal plane divides the body into left and right halves, and then transverse plane. And you notice the transverse plane in the video is usually with a lot of twisting, and that divides the body into superior, so upper portion, and inferior, lower portion halves. All right, and then these are directional terms. So moving down would be inferior, moving up would be superior, moving to the side away from the middle of the body or the medial midline is lateral. Anything towards the front of the body is anterior, anything towards the back is posterior. All right, so these are different types of directional terms. This is a little bit more detailed, I guess you can say. Bilateral would be paired structures. So bi we know is two, and lateral is side by side. So our lungs are bilateral. What else is, what other paired structures do we have, you guys, that are bilateral? Your ears, absolutely. What else?
Our eyes.
Our eyes, right? Yep. Our arms, our legs, right? Anything in pairs where they're lateral from each other. So all the terms that we're starting to learn when we start programming exercise and we start talking about movement, and that's the kinesiology part of this course, which you guys will eventually get to. We're going to take all these and look at movement now. And you can see in the video that she did a front lunge, which is sagittal plane, into a twist, which is transverse plane. And that's how we move in everyday life. So just to know where we're going with these directions. So if you don't have a clear understanding of the directions, let me know. Sorry, my dog's kind of wanting attention. Distal. When you think of distal, you think of like distance, like something far. So this is further from point of attachment to the trunk. So when we refer, so remember our body, right? The center of our body is like, this is where our center of mass is, like right in this region here. That's considered your center of mass. If you move away from it, we're going laterally. We're moving towards it is midline. Distal would be when you're moving away from it, from a point of attachment to our trunk, which is our center. So like our fingers, right? If you look at our fingers compared to relative to the wrist, it's distal, right? It's away from the attachment, which is here. Attachment of the trunk is my arm, my shoulder, isn't it? So if I'm looking all the way down to my fingers compared to my wrist, it's distal. Proximal would be the opposite of that, closer to the point of attachment to the trunk. So if my arm, my close point of attachment is my shoulder to the trunk. If I look at where my elbow is relative to my wrist, that's closer, right? So that's going to be proximal. Like if you talk about approximately, right? When those words, it's the same root word. where is the school? If somebody's asking you where Eagle Rock High School is, it's approximately around the Eagle Rock Rec Center, but it's distant from Sprouts, right? So those are the root words that come into play. So don't overthink this. You've heard these words thousands of times in your lifetime. So distal is always further from the point of attachment. So in this case, if you look at your arm, your point of attachment to your trunk, the body, the main part of your body is your shoulder. Fingers are distal to the wrist. Where is the wrist relative to the elbow? Distal or proximal? Where is your wrist relative to your elbow? So first thing you do is you look at point of attachment, shoulder.
Proximal. Proximal.
Proximal, right. Getting close. Well, wrist relative to your elbow. Distal, right? It's still further away from my point of attachment here. If I asked you the other way though, elbow relative to the wrist, then you say it's proximal. Does that make sense? Always look at your point of attachment, which is closer, which is further. So let's take your let's look at our leg, lower leg, right? Our femur. Where is the knee relative to our ankle? So first thing, look at your point of attachment to the body. Yeah, proximal, right? Because the point of attachment is your hip, right? Your leg is attached to the trunk of the body through the hip joint. And then our knee is closer, so it's proximal to that point of attachment than the ankle. That's correct. Do you guys see that? What if I said, where are your toes relative to the knee? Distal, right?
Distal.
Because absolutely. So always look at your point of attachment first, and then where is it relative to that point of attachment? So distal because it's further away. All right, excellent. When we refer to something that's deep, that's more internal. So like if you get a cut, so deep and superficial, so those are the opposites. So superficial would be more external, deep would be within. So if you get a paper cut, what is a paper cut? Superficial or deep? Superficial, right? No big deal. I probably don't need to put a Band-Aid in it. But if I took a blade and then I did this, and you were gushing, that would be deep. That would be deep. So in the example that you see on the PowerPoint, the dermis is a deep layer of skin. The epidermis is a superficial layer of skin. So we have 6 layers of skin. If you look at the word, let's put a slash. Dermis is skin. Epi is a prefix that means around, above or around. So this would be our epidermis would be the top layer. It's the most superficial of the skin. That's the one that's most exposed to the elements. And dermis, as we go 6 layers down, would be the deeper layer of the skin. All right, any questions on this? Everyone clear? Do you need more examples? Yes or no?
We are good.
You are good? Okay, awesome. Then why don't we take a 10-minute break before we get into the abdominal regions? And then I will see you guys back at 10:18. So get up, do some jumping jacks, get the blood flowing. It's really important you guys do that. Try not to take this class laying down. You're just gonna fall asleep. And I'll see you guys in a few minutes. All right, we all back? All right, any questions so far? Are we clear on where we're, if you're in the book, refer to page 16 and 17, which gives you clear definitions. And I'm gonna add a couple more, a few more. But for some reason why it's not in this PowerPoint. Let's just say continued. So make sure you guys have this, you're writing this down in your notes. All right, so, oops, this should be here. So these are directional terms: bilateral, distal, proximal, deep, and superficial. And there's also contralateral. Contra, I'm gonna put a slash. So if we know lateral is to the side, right? When you're contradicting somebody, what are you doing? Oops. What do you do when you're contradicting? What are you really doing when you're contradicting somebody? Do you believe in the same thing or the opposite thing? The opposite, right? So contralateral would be refers to structures on the opposite sides of the body. Contralateral. So refers to structures on the opposite side of the body, right? The opposite side. So whereas my left arm is contralateral to my right arm. Your left ear is contralateral to your right ear, right? On the opposite side of the body. Now, if we're referring to structures on the same side of the body, it's still lateral, right? Because again, it's away from the midline. Anything away from the midline is lateral. But if it's on the same side, it's called ipsilateral. IPSI, sorry. Ipsilateral. And the only reason I'm putting a slash is to separate the prefix from the root word so you guys can see it. So ipsilateral then refers to structures on the same side. So your right ear is ipsilateral to your, what's the structure on the same side? What's this? Give me a structure on the same side as your right ear. How about your right shoulder, your right arm, your right foot, right? It's still on the same, it's on the right side of your body. Anything on the right side of your body refers to the structures, the same side, ipsilateral. So contradicting somebody is always on the opposite, and ipsilateral is always on the same side. Are we sure we're back? Are we back, guys, from our little break? All right, just want to make sure.
Wait, so what's contralateral?
Opposite side.
So
Think
can
of
you
when,
give me
yeah,
example?
so your left ear is contralateral to your right ear, right? It's on the opposite side of your body.
What would be an ipsilateral then?
On the same side. So your right ear is ipsilateral to your right shoulder,
Okay, got it.
to your right elbow, to your right knee, to your right hip, to your right foot, right? On the same side. So contralateral and ipsilateral. And the other term would be medial, would be opposite of distal that you guys just learned. So just to clarify what medial is, this is an imaginary midline of your body, because that has to be a referencing point. Right in the middle of your body, imaginary midline, because we have to reference away from it. All right, so if we take our different directional terms that you guys just learned, starting from this slide, all right, just keep it all in mind here, and then this one. Now I can really start narrowing down where these body parts are. So for example, if I talked about my right shoulder relative to my left hip, right shoulder. So put your hand, one hand on your right shoulder, the other hand on your left hip. And I'm going to describe to you where my right shoulder is relative to my left hip. First of all, it's going to be superior, right? My shoulder is superior of my hip, right? Always going up. And it's also going to be contralateral on the opposite side. So superiorly contralateral to my left hip. Do you guys see that? Yes or no? Your right shoulder is superior of your left hip. It is also contralateral to the left hip. Now I'm going to take my right hand, which is on my right shoulder. My left hand's still on my left hip. So do this with me, right? When you guys are at home. Most of you guys, all of you guys have your videos off, but you have to do the kinesthetic learning of this, because it's the only way it's going to make it easier for you. If you're just watching me or just listening to me, it's going to be a little harder to absorb. You have to physically do this stuff. So now I'm going to take my right hand. I'm going to move it to my left shoulder. Remember, my reference point is my left hand and my left hip. My right hand moves from my right shoulder now to my left shoulder. You tell me now where this left shoulder is relative to my left hip. Give me two directional terms.
Can you go back to the other one?
Mm-hmm.
Ipsilateral.
Right, ipsilateral, and what else?
Inferior or superior?
Yeah, superior. Okay. Okay, good, Ian. Very good. Now I can even go even further if I want to actually tell you where my right shoulder, or my left shoulder is. Not only is it superior of my left hip, right, because it's above. Not only is it ipsilateral to my left hip because it's on the same side, but I can also find it on the anterior part of my body, right? The front of my body. So my left shoulder, if I'm talking about the front of it, is located on the anterior side of my body, superior of my left hip, and ipsilateral of my left hip. So you're really mapping these regional anatomy, right? These sections, these individual parts. You're really trying to map it. So it's like if you were you turned off the lights and you were trying to describe to somebody where something is, right? But you have to do it through directional terms. So let's do this. I'm gonna just read off some directional terms, right? I want you guys to either close your eyes or turn the other way, and I want you to tell me what body part I'm referring to. You guys ready? All right, so you guys tell me what body part, okay? So try to close your eyes or turn away. Okay, so this is relative. You're gonna take your left hand. This is our starting point. You're gonna take your left hand and I want you to put it on your right elbow. So your left hand, so your right elbow will be your referencing point. Okay. Now this structure.
Left elbow.
So take your left hand, can't put it on your left elbow, so you have to put it on
Oh,
your
yeah.
right elbow.
Okay,
Yeah?
yeah.
Okay. If you could do that, show me, because I really want to see that. So take your left hand and hold on to your right elbow. All right, so that's your starting point. Now I want you guys to go superior, contralateral. So superior of the right shoulder, contralateral, but inferior to my chin. So superior of the right elbow, contralateral, but inferior of my chin. Where am I?
Left shoulder.
Yeah, left shoulder. Very good. Nice job. Perfect. All right, let's do one more. So now I want you to take your right arm, your right hand, and put it on your right hip. That's your referencing point. Right arm to your right hip. All right, turn the other way, close your eyes. Now I want you to go medially. So we're going to go medial. But this structure is inferior of my diaphragm. That's all I'm going to give you. So from your right hip, I want you to go medial, but inferior of my diaphragm.
Your reproductive organs.
Or what else is there?
Your belly button.
Yeah, belly button. All right, excellent. You guys are getting it. Okay, good. All right, any questions on that? Very good. So what I want you guys to do is start looking at, you know, test it on yourself, right? Look in the mirror and try to look at a certain part of your body, find a referencing point, and then walk yourself through these directional terms. Or have somebody in front of you, like a parent or siblings, and just say, okay, stand on, you know, stand up, go in anatomical position. I want you to take your right arm or your right hand, for example, and touch your right shoulder. And then tell them to put their other hand anywhere else, right? And then you try to tell yourself in directional terms where that left hand is. So do those drills. Those drills are really important in this class, because this is a movement class. And we don't have the luxury of being in the class together where I can't get you guys to stand up, right? I have to trust that you guys are doing this. But really, that is the best way to learn these directional terms. Okay, then we talked about these other directional terms. I added these 3 that you should know. Make sure I don't miss anything. Okay. All right, let's see how many more slides. I want to try to get to these slides. All right, then we have, then we're going to talk about now, how do we take these directional terms and really, really look at our anatomy so that we can find certain structures. So in our abdominal section, our abdominal cavity, abdominal pelvic cavity, right, so where most of our organs lie. And then even in this area, we have to break it down even further. So if you look at your abdominal area, so the picture that I'm showing you guys, it's like you take a tic-tac-toe. Now we actually have to now create regions as well as quadrants. And you notice the pictures here is always referencing anatomical position, facing forward, arms by the side, palms facing forward, feet right underneath you. And And the reason why abdominal regions and quadrants are important is because if you go in the hospital and you're unconscious, right? Let's say you walk in or you're in pain, you can't talk. And then the doctor is like, okay, where do you hurt? And you're gonna point to, let's say this area here, right iliac region, or your right lower quadrant. If I divide your stomach into 4 parts in a quadrant, right lower quadrant. Or you're at home and you're calling the doctor and saying, I'm in so much pain, and I ask you, what part of your body are you in? You're gonna describe this area. So I'm gonna say, okay, this guy's in pain in the right lower quadrant. I'm gonna look at organs that are in here. Right now you've just narrowed it down, because if you just say, oh, my stomach, but if I say point to your belly button, in which way does it hurt, right? We're trying to figure out, then it tells me exactly in the right lower quadrant. I'm looking at maybe a bladder infection. There's some ascending colon, so part of your intestines are here. Reproductive organs. Also your appendix are here. So chances are you may have an appendicitis. So we're gonna now divide the body into regions. So going into, let me go back to another video, which gives you guys a different visual. Let's see, I think it's in this one. Okay.
And let me share.
Abdominal quadrants. Abdominal pelvic regions and abdominal quadrants. Abdominal pelvic regions were created to make it easier to locate organs and diagnose the source of abdominal pain. These regions are divided into 9 sections, which are set up like a tic-tac-toe board. Looking at the body from the anterior or front view will make right and left appear backwards. But these are named in reference to the body itself, not the viewer of the body. So now we're going to go through all 9 regions and map them out, starting with the right hypochondriac region, which is in the upper left corner. The epigastric region is in the upper center section. The left hypochondriac region is in the upper right corner. The right lumbar region is in the middle left section. The umbilical region is located in the center. The left lumbar region is in the middle right section. The right iliac region is in the lower left section. The hypogastric region is in the lower center area, and the left iliac region is in the lower right section. Many professionals prefer to use a simpler map of regions to locate organs in abdominal pain. They section the area into 4 quadrants. Again, looking at the body from the anterior view will make right and left appear backwards, but again, these are named in reference to the body itself, not the viewer of the body. These are all basic in terminology. There is the upper right quadrant, the left upper quadrant, the right lower quadrant, and the left lower quadrant. And that be the abdominal pelvic regions and abdominal quadrants.
All right, so let's look at these individual sections.
The regions first. All right, so you can remember that the regions are divided into 9 sections, 9 sections. So the first one would be your left hypochondriac. So just so you guys know, so when we look at this medical term, chondri or chondriac refers to your breastbone. Your hypo is anything that is below the norm. So versus hyper, right? If someone's hyperactive, they're above active. But if somebody's hypoactive, then they're below active. So when we take the prefix hypo, put it with the root word chondri or chondriac, that's below the breastbone. So the left, so here's your breastbone right here. The left hypochondriac is right below it on the, remember, on the patient's left side. So that's this area here. So in this area, there are parts of the stomach, the intestine, and our spleen. So that's this area here. When I see you guys next week, we'll map it out on the anatomical, the 3D model. Okay, and then we have our right hypochondriac, right, the opposite side. So again, hypo is below, chondri or chondriac is a breastbone, so below the breastbone, and on the right side. So on that right side, we have our right lobe or the liver and the gallbladder. Then we have their epigastric region. Gastric is stomach. Epi is above. So gastric is above, epigastric is above the stomach, and that's right in the center, but above our umbilical region. So epigastric, we have parts of the liver and most of the stomach. The left lumbar, so our lumbar is our lower back. So if you take where your lower back is, come right to the anterior part of your body, the left side would be here, and then the right side would be here. So equivalent to the area where your low back is, so just in the anterior portion. And then the umbilical region is where your belly button is, where our umbilical cord was. The belly buttons we don't use anymore. And then the left iliac region and the right iliac region, referencing, these are small intestines and your appendix and your right ovary. It's iliac because if you take your thumb and press it right at your hip, where your hip bone is, right at the very top of your hip bone, and it's like a crest like this, that bone is called an iliac. So here's your right and left iliac region. And then right in the center would be your, right around where the reproductive system would be, is hypogastric. So remember, hypo means below, gastric is your stomach. So below your stomach would be your hypogastric region. So the way I want you guys to know this is if I were to point to it, if I took all these definitions out and I were to point to it and I tell you what is this region called, then you're going to be able to identify it, right? Maybe now you won't be able to identify what's in it, but at least know what the regions are called. So I want you guys to kind of refer back to the PowerPoint and study up until this point. Look over your notes and your, and then that video you just watched will be on Schoology in the study guides folder. Any questions? You guys good?
Miss,
Yes, Ruben.
could you go to the second slide of the abdominal region?
This one?
Yes, thank you.
So your right lumbar, remember, is take your low back, your lumbar region of your back, and on your right side, these are parts of the small and large intestines. The left iliac would then be on the contralateral side. Iliac is your hip bone. So if you take your thumb and just press on your hip, where that bone is, right at the top, right before you hit your stomach, that's an iliac. Parts of your colon, small intestine. Hypogastric, hypo is below, gastric is your stomach, so right below your stomach. Urinary bladder, parts of the small intestine, and then go laterally to the right side would be your right iliac. And the only thing you guys have due today would be your concussion on the nfhslearn.com. Some of you guys are still missing it. Let's start off the next grading period on time, guys. Any other questions? All right, I guess that's it. I will see you guys next week, Monday. Oh, this afternoon, 2:30. You can make it, please. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, see you guys.
Bye. Thank you. It's pretty
Bye,
interesting.
you're welcome.
Bye, miss.
Bye, Ruben. Good job today.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye, thank you, you too.